The moment I opened my eyes, I was already in the story. My brother was accusing me of deliberately pushing him down the stairs. My father's face was a mask of fury. How could I have a son as venomous as you? My mother cradled my brother, her eyes, when they met mine, filled with nothing but disappointment and blame. If anything happens to your brother, you can pack your bags and go back to that hellhole you came from. I just calmly rolled my neck, then grabbed my so-called brother by the face and slammed his head into the floor. There, I said, now you probably can't feel the pain from the fall, right? Before I was in the book, I was scrolling through some trashy novel on a reading app. It was one of those miserable switched-at-birth stories. The main character was a total doormat, constantly misunderstood, always framed, despised by the very parents who should have loved him. In the end, he gets his kidney forcibly donated and takes the fall for a crime he didn't commit. It was like he'd offended God himself. His life was just one long train wreck. I was so angry I could spit. So what if the guy didn't have a voice? Didn't he have hands and feet? It pissed me off. But of course, I'm a glutton for punishment. I actually finished the whole damn thing. I was so worked up I jumped out of bed and ran through a set of military-style calisthenics just to burn off the rage. As I finished, a wave of dizziness washed over me. My brain felt like it had been force-fed a data dump the size of a planet. I nearly collapsed. When my head cleared, I realized what had happened. I'd been sucked into the book. I had become the novel's pathetic main character. A robotic voice echoed in my mind. You had so much to say. You think you're so tough. Fine. You get to change his fate. I mentally knocked on the inside of my skull. Cool. So, can I kill his entire family? The voice returned. Negative. This novel is not a lawless land. All characters must adhere to the rule of law. Whatever I thought. A trashy soap opera with a legal system. Lame. I sifted through the new memories, the plot of the book, now my own history. The tragic life of the main character, Ethan Hayes, was so relentlessly bleak it could have been its own Dostoevsky novel. He was swapped at birth by the family driver, who wanted his own son to live a life of pampered luxury. So while the driver's son grew up as a privileged heir, Ethan was sold off to a family in the desolate backcountry of rural Montana. His days were spent herding sheep and mending fences. At night, he'd study by the light of the moon. If his adoptive parents caught him, they'd string him up and beat him. Somehow, he managed to finish high school. That's when the Hayes family discovered the switch and brought him back. He thought he was finally returning to a better life. He was wrong. It was just a different kind of misery. When the wealthy Hayeses saw the rough, weathered kid from Montana standing before them, their faces fell. Disappointment was written all over them. They showed him none of the warmth a family should. All their affection was reserved for their adoptive son, the one who carried himself with the polished grace of the elite. Their biological son meant nothing to them. This emboldened the fake heir, Caleb, to escalate his torment. Time and time again, he framed Ethan, slandering him with a sick sort of pleasure. And Mr. and Mrs. Hayes believed every lie Caleb told them. Ethan, desperate to escape his situation, pushed himself to be better, to be more accomplished, hoping his parents would finally see him. But they remained indifferent. Finally, Ethan lost all hope in the world. He tried to kill himself again and again. He was the king of losers. Couldn't even succeed at suicide after so many attempts. I cursed under my breath. What a coward. If you're going to go that far, at least take the bastard Caleb with you. A life for a life. Wipe out the whole family line. I got up out of the bathtub and tossed the razor blade in the trash. Just then, the door was thrown open. I stepped out of the bathroom and came face to face with a handsome, pale kid. I instantly recognized the venomous face from my new memories. Caleb Vance, the cuckoo in the nest. He sauntered over with an arrogant smirk. He shoved a crumpled $20 bill into my hand, as if bestowing a great charity. Hey bro, Mom and Dad said it's the same deal as always for the exams. You write my name on your paper. This is your, service fee. The original Ethan, despite his lack of a formal, high-end education, was naturally brilliant. Since returning to the Hayes family, he'd studied relentlessly to gain his parents' attention, and his grades were excellent. Caleb, on the other hand, had been given every top-tier educational advantage, but had zero interest in academics. His grades were a joke compared to Ethan's. The first time Ethan had placed in the top 10 of his class, he brought the report card to his parents, hoping they'd be proud that they'd finally look at him. Instead, Caleb threw a dramatic fit and staged a runaway attempt. He wailed that his grades were so poor, he wasn't worthy of being a Hayes anymore. He'd had years of the best education, yet he couldn't even compete with Ethan, who'd just arrived. It was a disgrace to the family name. His parents panicked, stopping Caleb at the door. Then they turned on Ethan, publicly accusing him of flaunting his grades just to humiliate Caleb. They said he was malicious. From that day on, they ordered Ethan to swap names on every exam. It was, they claimed, to protect the family's public image, to craft the perfect persona of a flawless high society family. The weak, spineless Ethan had no choice but to accept his reality and obey. I snapped back from the memory. A cold smirk played on my lips as I unfolded the $20 bill. It was torn and faded. I had no idea where he'd found a bill so pathetic a homeless person would probably tear it down. There was a disgusting, unidentifiable stain on it. Caleb's smile widened. Sorry, bro. It's all the cash I have on me. I usually just use my card, you know? This was the only bill I had left, so I figured I'd give it to you. The smug look on his face hadn't even faded when he heard a rip. The bill was in 2 pieces in my hands. Yo, what the? Before he could finish, I crumpled the pieces into a ball and shoved it straight into his mouth. I grabbed the back of his neck, forcing his head back as he gagged. $20 to buy a top 10 grade? Buddy, your lowball offer is so loud the coyotes back in Montana could hear it. Caleb's face turned beet red as he choked on the paper. He coughed violently, trying to spit it out, but I held my hand firmly over his mouth. I let go. I watched with cold satisfaction as he dropped to his knees, dry heaving, trying to cough up the wad of paper. He had never expected me to fight back. His eyes, full of venom, locked onto mine. You dare. Cough. My lips curled into a grin. I felt a surge of pure pleasure. All the rage from reading that stupid novel was finally being released. I lifted my foot and pressed it lightly onto his back. A little pressure was all it took to make him sprawl flat on the floor. His face met the expensive hardwood with a smack. You what? Who the hell gave you permission to speak? He struggled to get up, but my foot pinned him helplessly. Ethan Hayes, get off me. I'll tell Mom and Dad. I swear to God, he roared, his voice muffled by the paper still in his throat. I pressed down harder. Let's talk. And remember to spit out my $20 first. After all, it was a gift from you. With that, I straightened my clothes, lifted my foot off his back, and stretched my neck as I walked out of the room. As I left, I could hear Caleb's ragged coughs and curses behind me. It was giving me a headache, so I did him the favor of closing the door. For a supposed heir to a fortune, the original Ethan was practically malnourished. I shook my head at the skinny frame staring back at me in the mirror. In the years since he'd been back, I doubt Ethan had eaten more than a few square meals. His face was pale, his wrists as thin as twigs. Nope, can't let the revolutionary machine break down. Ignoring the shocked stare of the housekeeper, Maria, who was arranging flowers in the living room, I walked to the wine cabinet and grabbed a bottle of what looked like some top-shelf red. I popped the cork and took a long pull straight from the bottle. The rich, smooth liquid slid down my throat, bursting with notes of dark fruit and oak. You had to hand it to the rich. They drank well. Maria's face went white, her eyes a mix of panic and disdain. And Mr. Ethan, sir, that's your father's prized. What do I need to report to you before drinking my own family's wine? I swirled the bottle. Or are you the one calling the shots in this house now? Maria fell silent, not daring to say another word. I wandered into the kitchen. After rummaging through the Sub-Zero fridge, I pulled out some prime ingredients and cooked myself a quick lunch. Then, right in front of Maria, I devoured a massive ribeye steak, roasted asparagus, and a couple of fried eggs until the plate was clean. The feeling of a full stomach was a long-lost friend. I let out a sigh of pure contentment. I put down my fork and knife just in time to see Caleb, his face a dark scowl, rushing down the stairs. He saw me, open his mouth to say something, but then his eyes darted toward the front door. A flicker of cunning crossed his face. Right in front of me, he threw himself backward onto the landing. An earth-shattering wail erupted from his mouth. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes had just walked in. The first thing they saw was Caleb's pathetic state on the floor. Seeing her precious son like that, Mrs. Hayes's face went pale with horror. She dropped her designer handbag and rushed to his side, gathering him, in her arms. Caleb, what happened? Are you hurt? Tell Mommy, are you badly hurt? Mr. Hayes hurried over as well, frantically checking Caleb for injuries. Are you okay, son? How did you fall? Please tell me nothing is broken. Caleb clutched his neck, his face streaked with tears and the residue of his earlier dry heaving. Dad, Mom, you have to stand up for me. He wiped his eyes, casting a fake, fearful glance in my direction. Today, I was just trying to connect with my brother. I was worried he didn't have enough spending money, so I gave him $20. I never thought. He just attacked me. He pushed me down the stairs. Maria, seeing the drama unfold, quickly retreated into the kitchen. Caleb's story grew more tragic with every word, tears flowing like a broken faucet. I was just trying to be nice to him. I don't know why he would do this to me. Maybe he was insulted by the $20. Maybe he thought taking money from a mere adoptee like me would taint his status. I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad. It's all my fault. Mr. Hayes's head snapped up, his gaze like daggers aimed at me, a vein throbbing in his temple. Ethan Hayes, you monster. How could this family have produced something as vile as you? Mrs. Hayes held the sobbing Caleb, her eyes on me, glacial and sharp, filled with disgust and disappointment. You've barely been back, and you're already tearing this family apart. If I had known you were like this, I never would have brought you here. If Caleb is seriously hurt, you can get the hell out and go back to where you came from. I stood at the edge of the dining room. I slowly, deliberately wiped my mouth with a napkin, and I calmly watched the circus. The robotic voice in my head chimed in, dripping with schadenfreude. See, the power of the plot is absolute. I scoffed internally. Then I spoke, my voice even and calm. He said some disgusting things, so I hit him. I lost my temper, but I didn't push him down the stairs. He's lying. I'll own what I did, but don't you dare try to pin his bullshit on me. Ethan, my father looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. You still dare to argue. Mr. Hayes's roar echoed through the cavernous living room, seeming to make the crystal chandelier tremble. Mrs. Hayes's gaze grew even colder, as if she were looking at a hopeless stranger. In her arms, Caleb's sobs intensified, his shoulders shaking with Oscar-worthy skill. Caleb reached out and grabbed both of his parents' hands. Mom, Dad, please don't be angry. I'm sure my brother didn't mean it. And look, I'm fine. Besides, he must have held back. At least I didn't die from the fall. I'm still alive. He wiped away another tear as he spoke. Ignoring my father's fury and my mother's icy glare, I walked directly toward Caleb, who was still trembling on the floor. My steps were steady. My face even held a trace of an amused smile. This bizarre calm momentarily stunned my parents. Even Caleb's crying hitched for a second. WH, what are you doing? A flash of panic crossed Caleb's eyes, and he instinctively shrank back, clinging tighter to Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Hayes snapped out of it, stepping between us and shouting, Stop right there. Are you going to assault him right in front of us? I stopped and tilted my head, looking at Caleb with a flat, emotionless tone. Assault? Dad, that's a strong word. I just want to confirm how badly my dear brother was hurt in his fall. I put special emphasis on the words. After all, tumbling down a flight of stairs is no small thing. Best case, some bruises and scrapes. Worst case, broken bones, a concussion. Even paralysis isn't out of the question. My gaze swept over Caleb's clearly uninjured limbs and his darting, evasive eyes. If anything happens to Caleb, I'll skin you alive. Mrs. Hayes shrieked, clutching him tighter. Mom, I'm okay. It's just my arm and leg really hurt, and my head feels a little dizzy. Caleb immediately began to moan weakly, his performance flawless. I laughed. The sound was jarring in the tense atmosphere. Dizzy, arms and legs hurt. We should definitely get that checked out. With a calm roll of my neck, I lunged forward. I grabbed my so-called brother by the face and slammed his head into the ground. I moved so fast no one had time to react. The back of his head connected solidly, brutally, with a polished, unyielding marble floor of the foyer. Thwack! It was a sickeningly dull sound that hurt just to hear. Caleb didn't even have time to scream before he passed out cold. There, I said. Now you probably can't feel the pain, right? The world seemed to hit the pause button. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes stood frozen, their hands outstretched in midair, staring in utter disbelief. Mrs. Hayes recovered first, scrambling to Caleb's side. Caleb, what's wrong? Don't scare Mommy. Mr. Hayes, his eyes bloodshot with rage, lunged at me, his hand raised to strike. Thank God I'd eaten a big lunch. I easily sidestepped his swing. His slap met empty air, and the force of it sent him stumbling. He pointed a trembling finger at me, shaking with such fury that his voice cracked. You've lost your mind. You animal. How could you? How could you be so vicious? Mrs. Hayes cradled the unconscious Caleb, her sobs tearing through the room. Call the police. Call 911. Have this murderer arrested. Between cries, she frantically checked Caleb for a pulse. A small smile touched my lips. Mom, Dad, if you don't get your precious adopted son to a hospital soon, he might not die, but he could end up with brain damage. My words snapped my father out of his rage. Seeing the small trickle of blood seeping from the back of Caleb's head in his completely limp state, Mr. Hayes's face went white as a sheet. He forgot all about punishing me, shouting frantically, Arthur, get the car ready now, we're going to the hospital. The driver, Arthur, rushed in and froze at the scene, terrified. He and my father clumsily lifted Caleb and hurried toward the door. Mrs. Hayes followed, wailing, stopping only to shoot me a look so full of venom it could have killed. Thanks to prompt medical attention, Caleb's life wasn't in danger. However, there was a small patch on the back of his head where hair might never grow again. For someone like Caleb, who was obsessed with his appearance and had always cultivated the image of a perfect, handsome young aristocrat, this tiny bald spot was a fate worse than death. The Hayes family valued their reputation above all else. They didn't dare let the true story get out. The official version was that Caleb had accidentally fallen down the stairs. But Caleb wasn't about to let it go. On my first day back at school, I was cornered in the bathroom by a group of his wannabe thugs. The leader, a guy with bleach blonde hair, pointed a cigarette-wielding finger at my face. The hell is wrong with you? Didn't I warn you? I told you not to mess with Caleb. What are you, stupid? You think I'm a joke? With that, he threw a punch straight at my head. I sidestepped, and his punch met air. He'd put so much force into it that he stumbled forward into a stall. I grabbed his shoulder, spun him around, and kicked the back of his knee. Caught off guard, and with his knee buckling, he was pulled off balance. He fell with a thud, kneeling right in front of the toilet bowl. His head narrowly missed cracking against the porcelain. It was a pathetic sight. I grabbed him by the neck and shoved his face toward the water. You said I wasn't paying attention to you. Well, I'm all eyes now. Happy. The acrid smell of disinfectant, mixed with something far worse, filled his nostrils. He struggled wildly, his hands flailing. Gagging, terrified noises sputtered from his throat. His little cronies just stood there, dumbfounded. They had probably never imagined that the quiet, meek Ethan Hayes, their usual punching bag, could be this vicious. He was supposed to be the kid you could push around without any consequences. It was like he was a completely different person. Shit, let go of Spike, one of them finally yelled, rushing forward to grab me from behind. I didn't even turn around. I shot my heel back, a sharp, precise kick that connected squarely with his shin. The kid screamed, clutching his leg as he collapsed, whimpering in pain. That move froze the others. They exchanged nervous glances, none of them daring to make a move. I applied more pressure, and Spike's face was nearly submerged in the toilet water. He was scared out of his mind, his pleas for mercy muffled and garbled. MMPH. Let go. My bad. Ethan. Man, I'm sorry. I let go, and kicked him for good measure. Spike sprawled over the toilet, too scared to move. I reached into his pants pocket, pulled out his pack of cigarettes and a lighter, and lit one up for myself. I took a drag and gave his remaining goons the side eye. None of them made a peep. I blew out a smoke ring, which swirled lazily in the dim bathroom light. Damn, smoking parliaments in high school. What are you going to be smoking when you graduate? Cuban cigars. I weighed the pack in my hand and slipped it into my own pocket. I glanced at Spike, who was still dry heaving, and his terrified friends. I'm confiscating these. You're students. You should be studying, not smoking. I pointed at each of them with my cigarette. They all instinctively took a step back, avoiding my gaze. Get lost, I said, waving my hand like I was shooing away flies. They looked like they'd just been granted a presidential pardon. They scrambled to pull up Spike and the guy still clutching his leg, then practically fled the bathroom without a single look back. What the hell was that? One of them muttered as they escaped. I stubbed out the cigarette in the sink, straightened my uniform from the scuffle, and walked calmly out of the bathroom. 6. Caleb's injury wasn't severe, but the bandage wrapped around his head made him stand out. When I got back to class, I saw him at his desk, surrounded by a crowd of students, all chatting about something. The moment I walked in, the conversation died. All eyes turned to me. Ethan Hayes. A cold female voice cut through the silence. I looked over and met a pair of icy eyes. My body reacted with a phantom pang of pain, a leftover from the original Ethan. It was Sophia Lancaster, my fiancée, in name at least. The original Ethan was hopelessly in love with her, but Sophia only had eyes for Caleb. She believed every word Caleb said, without question. She had hurt the original Ethan as much as anyone. Right now, she stood beside Caleb's desk, her expression one of pure, undisguised loathing. "You thief! You still have a nerve to show your face here." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the silent classroom. "Give back the $2,000 in class funds you stole." $2,000? I raised an eyebrow but didn't move. It seemed a little head trauma wasn't going to stop Caleb from his usual games. "What class funds?" I asked calmly. Still playing dumb? Sophia stepped forward, her beautiful eyes filled with contempt. "You were the last one to leave the classroom this afternoon." Caleb had just collected $2,000 in cash and put it in the teacher's desk drawer. "If you didn't take it, who did?" Caleb chose that moment to put on a pained, fragile expression, tugging on Sophia's sleeve. "Sophia, don't." Maybe my brother was just confused, or maybe he needed it for something urgent. His words were a masterclass in fake magnanimity, effectively cementing my guilt. The gazes of the other students turned sharp and judgmental. Whispers started to ripple through the room. Of course, the kid from the sticks has sticky fingers. He's always so gloomy. You could tell he was bad news. $2,000? That's enough to get the police involved, right? I let out a short, sharp laugh. My eyes swept over Caleb's faux noble face before landing on Sophia. "Caleb told you, right? So, I'm guessing you didn't even bother to check the security footage before you decided to brand me a thief?" Sophia's expression faltered for a second. "We don't need to check. Caleb never lies. Besides, this wouldn't be the first time you've been dishonest. I'm advising you to just hand over the money quietly. For the sake of being classmates, we can let this slide. If you don't, things are going to get ugly." As she finished, she reached out to search my pockets. I sneered, and in one swift move, I spun her around and pinned her against the desk. "Miss Lancaster, I know we have an engagement, but isn't this a little intimate for a public setting?" Sophia froze, her face flushing a deep crimson. She glared at me with disgust. "What are you talking about? I have zero interest in you. I'm looking for the class funds." "Is that so?" I glanced down at my thin, summer uniform. "I think you're deliberately ignoring the security cameras because you wanted an excuse to get close to me." Pinned against the desk and hearing my words, Sophia began to tremble with rage. Her cheeks were so red it looked like they might burst. A wave of shocked gasps and whispers went through the classroom. "Ethan Hayes, let me go. We want to get close to you. Stop flattering yourself." She struggled, but the awkward angle left her powerless. 7. "All right, brother," Caleb said, clutching his head and speaking in a weak voice. "I saw you take the money with my own eyes. Just give it back, and we can pretend this never happened. There's really no need to get the security footage involved." His words grated on me, making everything about him seem 10 times more punchable. I lifted my foot and kicked him clean off his chair. "There, much better." Caleb clearly hadn't expected me to attack him in front of everyone. A mixture of shock and rage filled his eyes, and they instantly welled up with tears. The classroom went dead silent. Everyone stared, mouths agape, in total disbelief. Sophia stopped struggling, her jaw hanging open in astonishment. "Ethan, are you insane?" she finally shrieked. "You not only steal, but now you're assaulting people." I released her and calmly stood up, brushing non-existent dust from my uniform. "Assaulting him? I'm teaching him a lesson." I looked down at Caleb, who was on the floor, clutching his stomach and grimacing. My eyes were ice. There are consequences for framing people without evidence. "Evidence? I am the evidence." Caleb gasped, his face pale, but his eyes burning with even more hatred. I saw myself. "You saw what?" I took a step closer, looming over him. Did you see me open the drawer? Or did you see me take the money out of it? What time was it? What was I wearing? Did I use my left hand or my right? I fired off the questions, my voice fast and clear. Caleb was stunned into silence. His eyes darted around. He obviously hadn't thought through the details of his lie. I just came back to get something, and I saw you acting all shady by the desk. Then the drawer was open, and the money was gone. Who else could it have been? Oh, you came back to get something? I seized on the detail. What did you come back for? When was this? Did anyone else see you? Caleb was speechless, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Seeing him falter, Sophia immediately jumped to his defense, glaring at me. Ethan, stop trying to change the subject. Do you really think Caleb would lie when he's already been hurt so badly? It was you. Sophia, I said, my voice quiet but carrying an undeniable weight. If your brain is just a fashion accessory, I'd be happy to help you relocate it. Right now, you have two choices. Either you go check the security footage and see for yourself who's lying, or I will personally escort you both to see it. My gaze shifted from Sophia to Caleb, then settled on the security camera in the corner of the room. And a friendly reminder, slander and defamation are illegal. $2,000 is enough to file a police report. Sophia trembled with rage at my blunt words, but when I mentioned illegal, a flicker of doubt finally crossed her face. Caleb looked even worse. He struggled to his feet, his tone suddenly softening into a tearful plea. Brother, maybe I was mistaken. My head was spinning and maybe I remembered it wrong. As soon as he said that, the expressions of the students around us shifted. The ones who had been so righteous a moment ago now looked at him with suspicion. Mistaken. I sneered. The $2,000 is still missing. Your mistake doesn't solve that. We're checking the footage. My stance was firm, non-negotiable. Sophia looked at Caleb's guilty expression, then at my confident one, and finally gritted her teeth. Fine, let's check. I refuse to believe it was anyone else. She stormed out of the classroom, clearly on her way to find the dean or head straight to the security office. Caleb tried to stop her, but was too late. His face went ashen, and his fingers trembled. I leaned back against my desk, thoroughly enjoying the sight of him squirming like the cornered rat he was. It didn't take long. Our homeroom teacher, Mr. Davison, returned with Sophia, his face grim. He was holding a phone, playing a security video. Every eye in the room was fixed on it. Mr. Davison walked to the front of the class. He gave me a complicated look, then turned his gaze to Caleb. All right, the class funds have been located. Everyone, settle down. The matter is resolved. His words were like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending ripples through the classroom. The students looked at each other, confused and curious. Located? Where were they? Someone asked. Sophia's face was a mask of humiliation. She bit her lip, her eyes darting everywhere, but at me or Caleb. Caleb looked like he knew what was coming. He was paler than before, practically swaying on his feet. He took an unconscious step back. Mr. Davison took a deep breath. It seems Caleb may have misplaced the money himself and simply forgotten. Trying to avoid offending the powerful Hayes family, it was clear Mr. Davison planned to sweep the whole thing under the rug. Was he kidding? I was going to teach him a lesson about the real world. I calmly straightened my uniform and walked up to the front of the classroom, standing beside him. I looked down at Caleb from the slightly elevated position. $2,000. That's not a small amount of money. I can't believe a thief would have the audacity to frame an innocent person. What a truly despicable mind. But I guess a thief is a thief. The son of a driver steals the Hayes family identity, and that's still not enough. Now he's stealing from his classmates. Was the allowance our family gives you not enough? The Hayes family gives you $10,000 a month. What are you talking about? Caleb's face turned a sickly green as he stared at me in a panic. To protect the family's image, Caleb's true parentage had never been made public. The official story was that the Hayeses had two sons. I was the eldest, raised in the countryside for health reasons. Caleb was the younger son, raised by their side. Coupled with Mr. and Mrs. Hayes' blatant favoritism, everyone believed Caleb was the truly cherished heir. Just as I expected, my words sent a shockwave through the classroom. Did he just say Caleb isn't a real Hayes. Caleb is the driver's son. So Ethan is the real heir. What the? No wonder Caleb stole the class money. He's not one of them. God, that's disgusting. And he had the nerve to frame the real heir. The whole Hayes fortune belongs to Ethan. Why would he care about $2,000? The whispers grew into a tidal wave. Dozens of eyes darted between me and Caleb, filled with shock, suspicion, and the dawning contempt of people realizing they've been duped. Caleb's face flushed red, then drained to a ghostly white. He scrambled for a defense, his voice high and shrill with panic. Ethan Hayes, you're lying. We're brothers. Why would you slander me like this? Oh, I'm slandering you. Then tell me, why did you frame me for taking the money? Caleb looked like he'd been strangled. All his arguments died in his throat, leaving only ragged breaths and a body that trembled uncontrollably. Mr. Davison was sweating bullets, standing awkwardly at the front, having completely lost control of the situation. He tried to intervene. Ethan, these are private family matters. There's no need to air them here. Just then, Sophia spoke up. Actually, about the money today. Caleb was just trying to play a little prank on his brother, Ethan. He didn't realize Ethan would be so sensitive about it. He overreacted, and now things have gotten awkward for everyone. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Even now, Sophia was still defending him. True love, I guess. I calmly replied. Since it was just a joke, Caleb can probably give the money back now. Any longer, and it might start to look like actual theft. Sophia's face instantly twisted into an ugly expression. She clearly hadn't expected me to take her excuse and turn it directly back on Caleb. She opened her mouth to argue, but couldn't find the words. Caleb shot me a hateful glare, then walked over to my desk and pulled the $2,000 out of my backpack. The air in the room seemed to solidify. His movements were deliberately slow, as if trying to project an aura of, I'm just playing along with a bad joke. But the tremor in his fingertips and his ashen face gave him away. Bro, he said, forcing a smile that was more painful than a grimace. I didn't realize you couldn't take a joke. Someone from the Great Hayes family wouldn't care about a measly $2,000. Sophia quickly took the money and handed it to the teacher. After the situation finally cooled down, Sophia cornered me, her brow furrowed in anger. Ethan, how could you do that to your brother? Your family. You need to apologize to Caleb right now. I snorted with laughter. Apologize? And what gives you the right to demand that from me? I leaned in close, lowering my voice to a whisper by her ear. Is it your position as my fiancé? Other people might not know Caleb's story, but you do. If you keep pushing me, I have no problem telling the entire world that he's a fake, that his father was a driver and a kidnapper who's currently rotting in prison. Sophia froze, then began to tremble with rage. The Lancasters and the Hayeses were old family allies. Our grandfathers had arranged our marriage when we were children. Originally, the engagement was with Caleb, but when the Lancasters found out the truth, they demanded the agreement be honored with the true heir, me. Old man Lancaster was a man of his word. Even with Grandpa Hayes gone, he was determined to uphold the pact. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes hated it, but they couldn't defy the Lancasters. The deal was for the Hayes heir, and an imposter wouldn't do. Sophia, however, believed she and Caleb were soulmates, childhood sweethearts. She didn't care if he was a real Hayes or not. She saw the original Ethan as the villain who had ruined her love story. Fueled by Caleb's constant lies and manipulations, her dislike for Ethan had festered into pure hatred. And the original Ethan, poor bastard, had fallen for her the moment he saw her. At the end of the school day, Caleb walked past my desk and leaned down to whisper a threat. This isn't over. You just wait. I looked up at him and smiled. Oh, I won't be holding back. So please, don't disappoint me. Trying to scare me. Did he really think I was that easy to intimidate? After school, at the Hayes family penthouse, I had barely stepped through the door when a teacup shattered at my feet. Kneel! My father's thunderous roar vibrated through the living room. My mother sat on the couch, cradling Caleb, whose forehead was still bandaged. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked at me like she wanted to eat me alive. Ethan Hayes, you worthless creature, forcing your brother to apologize in front of the whole school. You've dragged our family's name through the mud. How dare you treat Caleb like that? My father was shaking with rage. Caleb immediately went into his award-winning victim routine, sobbing weakly. Dad, Mom, don't blame my brother. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have joked with him. It was all me. Listen to him. Just listen to how considerate Caleb is. He's still defending you, my mother shrieked, hugging him tighter before turning her venom on me. You cold-hearted monster. Caleb is your brother. You smashed his head open, and then you humiliated him at school. Are you trying to drive him to his death? I calmly walked around the porcelain shards on the floor and sat down on the sofa opposite them. I even poured myself a glass of water. Mom, Dad, do you even understand what happened? I took a slow sip. Your precious adopted son stole class money to frame me, and he got caught. What does that have to do with me? You wouldn't be in this mess if you hadn't hit him first, my father yelled, completely ignoring logic. And you don't air our dirty laundry in public. Couldn't you have handled this privately? Did you have to make it the talk of the entire school? His tirade was giving me a headache. I honestly wanted to take a knife and end the whole family right then and there. The memory of reading about them in the novel was still fresh, and I hated them just as much in person. But then I remembered the rule of law. Getting arrested and executed would be a major inconvenience. My mother picked up where he left off. As the older brother, you stole Caleb's fiancée, and he never held it against you. Yet you constantly attack him. You have no sense of decency or generosity. I set down my glass, tapping a finger against the crystal. Are you done? If you are, I went to my room to rest. I stood up, ignoring my father's furious, "You get back here," and my mother's shrill curses. I walked straight toward the stairs. Caleb, hiding in my mother's arms, flashed a subtle, triumphant smirk in my direction, his eyes full of provocation. Just as I set foot on the first step, my father lunged at me, trying to grab me. I dodged him easily. He pointed at me, trembling with rage. You defiant brat. You're not going anywhere until you get on your knees, apologize to your brother, and beg for his forgiveness. My mother let go of Caleb and joined in, her voice sharp. That's right. Kneel. Apologize to Caleb. Caleb offered a weak, token protest. Dad, Mom, it's okay. Really, I'm fine. I glanced at my father's vein-popped hand, then met his furious gaze, and suddenly I smiled. Dad, I wouldn't mind sharing the story of Caleb's little theft with the world, and the fact that he's adopted. Imagine it. Caleb, the perfect, accomplished young heir, becomes a laughingstock. So, are you sure you want to keep talking to me like that? My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the suddenly silent room. My father's face turned an ugly shade of purple. Keeping up appearances was everything to them. Are you threatening us? He hissed, his voice low with disbelief and rage. You can see it that way. If you insist on twisting the facts, I don't mind playing along. Ignoring their stunned, horrified expressions, I turned and went upstairs. The moment I closed my bedroom door, the world was finally quiet. The next few days were peaceful. My parents left me alone, and Caleb was noticeably subdued, even going out of his way to avoid me in the hallways. Then came the midterm exams. Thanks to the original Ethan's brain, they were a breeze. Afterward, I was confident I'd be in the top 3. But when the results were posted, I couldn't find my name in the top 10. Third place. Caleb Hayes confused. I scanned the list again from top to bottom. Finally, I found my name way down the list. 489th place. Wow, Caleb is a genius. He got 3rd place. He's the perfect heir. He's got the looks, the brains, and I hear he's a talented artist too. Compared to him, his older brother Ethan is such a loser. Bad grades and a terrible personality. They were both raised by the Hayes family. How did one turn out so great and the other so pathetic? Caleb stood nearby, soaking in the compliments from his circle of classmates. He wore a humble smile, but his eyes kept flicking toward me, full of defiance. He even mouthed a silent message. See, it doesn't matter if you cooperate. I get what I want, one way or another. I smiled and walked toward him. Hey, little brother, congrats on 3rd place. That's amazing. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the fawning and silenced the crowd. Caleb's smile widened. Thanks, bro. Too bad you didn't do so well again. But don't worry, you'll get it next time. My own smile deepened. I clapped him on the shoulder, a little harder than necessary. Yeah, next time. But hey, there were a few questions I was hoping you could help me with. Could you walk me through them? Caleb's smile turned condescending, a look of smug superiority. Of course, bro. Anything for you. We can go over them at home tonight. He looked so pleased with himself, his eyes practically screaming. Is that all you've got? You can't touch me. Why wait until tonight? I said, grabbing his arm as he tried to turn away. Let's do it now. Everyone's here. It'll be a great chance for us all to learn from the third-place genius. The other students, intrigued, chimed in. Yeah, Caleb, show us. Lesson on your secrets. Caleb's expression faltered, but with everyone watching, he had to play along. Sure. Which problem? I pulled the exam paper from my bag and opened it to the final, extra credit math problem. It was notoriously difficult. Only a handful of students in the entire school had solved it. Oh, that one. I mean, I solved it, but it's pretty complicated to explain. I can write up a proper solution for you all later. Right? But could you just give me the basic approach? I like to try solving it myself now. Caleb's smile froze on his face. He had no clue how to solve it. He hadn't even attempted it. Well, this one is complex. It involved a lot of different concepts that you need to build up to. He stammered, his eyes darting around as he tried to stall. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The curious looks from the other students slowly morphed into suspicion. You have no idea how to do this, do you? I said with a smile, my voice just loud enough for those nearby to hear. The hallway went quiet. All eyes were on Caleb. Because if you can't solve it, then I'm starting to have some serious doubts about how you got third place. Caleb's voice was tight with panic. It's the final question. It's supposed to be hard. I just need a minute to remember my process. He even managed a weak smile for the crowd. Then he leaned in close to me, his voice a venomous whisper. Ethan Hayes, you think this will embarrass me? You're wrong. Your grades will always be my grades. I will always be the perfect Hayes heir, and you will always be the trash that crawled here from the countryside. A loser forever. I watched his desperate attempt to maintain his composure, then raise my voice so everyone could hear. What's wrong, little brother? Is your voice shaking because you're not feeling well, or is it because you have absolutely no idea where to even begin with this problem? Sorry, bro. I'm actually not feeling great today. I'll explain it to you tomorrow, once I'm better. With that, he ignored the murmurs of the crowd and tried to push his way out. Well, this is no fun. I pulled my phone from my pocket, where it had been recording. I hit the stop button. Then I turned the screen toward the crowd and cranked the volume to max. Caleb's whispered, hate-filled words filled the hallway, crystal clear. Your grades will always be my grades. I will always be the perfect Hayes heir, and you will always be the trash that crawled here from the countryside. A loser forever. Caleb froze in horror. He lunged for the phone, but I kicked his legs out from under him, sending him sprawling to the floor. When the recording finished, the corridor was dead silent. Every single student was staring, their minds reeling. I'm sure you're all a little confused about what's going on, I said. I hit play again, letting the recording loop as I spoke. As you probably figured out, Caleb's grades are a complete sham. A real genius wouldn't forget his entire thought process for a problem, especially since the final question wasn't hard because of the method, but because of the complex calculations involved. Caleb's grades have always been mediocre at best. How did he suddenly start placing in the top 10 every single time? I held the phone up high. Because Caleb Hayes, has been stealing my results on every single exam. And his failing grades, he's been putting my name on them. The hallway erupted. Everyone's gaze fixed on Caleb like a spotlight. The admiration and envy they'd felt moments before turned to shock, disgust, and the raw anger of being deceived. Oh my God, he cheated. Caleb has been stealing Ethan's scores this whole time. That's disgusting. No wonder he lied about the class money. He acted so perfect. He's a complete fraud. Caleb sat on the floor, his face as white as a sheet. Sweat poured down his temples. The mask of polished elegance had been shattered. He started screaming, trying to deny everything. No, he faked it. He's framing me. I earned my grades myself. Ethan, you're a pathetic liar for framing me like this. Don't believe him, everyone. He's a delinquent at home, a compulsive liar. His denials were hysterical and unconvincing. The other students were pointing and whispering, the noise growing louder. It was giving me a headache. I slapped him across the face, silencing him. Then I hauled him to his feet. Sorry, little brother. Since you won't admit it, I guess we'll just have to take a little trip to the principal's office. I'm going to make sure that on Monday, You are publicly disgraced in front of the entire school. No, I'm not going. You're framing me. I'm calling Mom and Dad. They'll set this straight. He struggled wildly, pulling out his phone with a crazed look in his eyes. I let him go, then kicked him squarely in the stomach. Quiet. You're embarrassing the family. You fall apart at the first sign of trouble. You're useless. And don't bother calling them. I just send them a text. You'll see them soon enough. Caleb curled into a ball on the floor, clutching his stomach. All the color had drained from his face. He stared at me with a mixture of terror and pure, undiluted hatred. But he didn't dare scream again. The principal was a formidable man in his prime, known for his integrity, handpicked for the job by the State Board of Education. In his office, the atmosphere was heavy. After I presented all my evidence, he called in a teacher to cross-reference every exam paper under my name and Caleb's. His frown deepened with every page. The proof was undeniable. He immediately ordered the dean's office to issue a formal correction and statement clearing my name and to begin disciplinary action against the teachers involved. Caleb stood to the side, gritting his teeth. No one can touch me until my parents get here, he seethed. They'll stand up for me. They'll make you pay for this. That's enough. The principal slammed his hand on the desk, his voice sharp. Do you think we're all blind? Or do you believe the Hayes family name is so powerful it can bend the rules of my school? Just then, the office door burst open. Mrs. Hayes rushed in, out of breath. Caleb grabbed her hand like a drowning man clutching a life raft. Mom! Before he could finish, she shoved his hand away and ran to me, grabbing my arm. Quickly, you have to come with me. Your father was in a car accident. If we don't hurry, we'll be too late. I was momentarily stunned by the sudden news. Mr. Hayes in a car accident? Was that in the book? Or had my actions changed the timeline? In the original story, his hospitalization happened much later, right before they needed to harvest the main character's kidney for a transplant. I composed myself and pulled my arm free. Mom, are you delirious with panic? If he's been in an accident, you should be taking him to a hospital, to a doctor. What do you need me for? Mrs. Hayes's voice was frantic. What are you saying? The blood bank is low. Your father has a rare blood type, and you're the only match. We have to go now. She reached for me again. I sidestepped her, my eyes flicking to Caleb, who looked just as stunned as I felt. A slow smile spread across my face. You still have your precious son, Caleb, don't you? Make him do it. Her face twisted into an ugly mask. She practically shrieked, Caleb, he's not his biological son. Only you can save your father. I stood my ground, not moving an inch. Not his biological son? Funny, sometimes I feel like I'm the one who isn't. After all, he gets a $10,000 monthly allowance. I get $300. He's decked out in designer clothes. I'm wearing stuff from Target. Even my good grades had to be his. I'll ask anyone here, between me and Caleb, who seems like the real son. Mrs. Hayes looked deeply uncomfortable. Ethan, listen to me. It's because you're our biological son that we've been so much stricter with you. Right now, your father's life is in danger. As his son, you have a responsibility to step up. If you save your father, I promise from now on, you and Caleb will be treated equally. Everything he has, you will have too. The principal tried to mediate. Ethan, saving a life is the most important thing. I let out a cold laugh, walked over to the sofa, and sat down, crossing my legs. I'm not against saving him, but only if you, mother, transfer all of your personal assets into my name and publicly announce the truth about my identity and Caleb's. She screamed, What is wrong with you? This is your father we're talking about. I lounged back on the principal's leather sofa, tapping my fingers on the armrest. Mom, look, Dad's on the brink of death. Time is money, as they say. All those stocks, properties, investment funds. The sooner you sign them over, the sooner Dad gets my blood. But if you delay, who knows if Dad has that much time away? I drew out the last words, savoring the way the color drained from her face. She trembled with rage, pointing a finger at me. You cold-blooded monster. That's your own father. Don't want to. Fine by me. Let him die. I stood up and started to walk out. Ethan, she cried, stopping me. Mom, don't beg him. We'll find another donor. We can't let him win. Caleb shouted, grabbing his mother's arm and glaring at me with pure hatred. Mrs. Hayes hesitated, looking down, clearly considering Caleb's words. I pulled out my phone and casually checked the time. Mom, think carefully. It's a 1 in a million blood type. Good luck finding a donor on such short notice. The hospital isn't going to wait. Finally, as if all the strength had been sucked out of her, she sagged, her voice a hoarse whisper. Fine, I agree. My father was the pillar of the family. With him out of commission, my mother was lost. Right there in the principal's office, with everyone as a witness, she signed a voluntary asset transfer agreement. All her stocks, properties, and funds are now legally mine. She also wrote a formal statement for the press, revealing Caleb's true parentage to the world. Feeling immensely satisfied, I was the first to walk out of the principal's office. Time to go give some blood. The moment Caleb's true story was released, it caused a media firestorm. Everyone now knew. Caleb Hayes was the son of a driver. His biological father had swapped us at birth, allowing him to steal the life that was meant for me. The stories of him stealing class funds and faking his grades also came to light. The perfect, polished, high society image he had so carefully constructed came crashing down. His reputation was destroyed. Everywhere he went, people pointed and whispered. Sophia Lancaster still stood by his side, but her eyes now held a new, complicated emotion. He became a recluse, too ashamed to even leave the house. After my blood transfusion, my father's life was saved, though he remained in a coma. Mrs. Hayes was consumed with caring for him and had no energy to deal with Caleb's scandal. In just 1 week, Caleb became a ghost of his former self. His face was gaunt and pale, with dark circles under his eyes. The old swagger was completely gone. Sophia, heartbroken over his decline, finally came to confront me. She cornered me in a secluded area behind the school library, her eyes red-rimmed. Ethan, I know you've been through a lot, but Caleb is terrified. Your return made him scared. He was afraid your parents would abandon him for you. That's why he did all those terrible things. Look at what you've done to him. He's a wreck. He can't even go outside. He's falling apart. I want you to publicly forgive him. If you do, I'll marry you as soon as I'm of age. If you don't, slap. Before she could finish her threat, my hand cracked across her face. The force of the blow snapped her head to the side, a bright red handprint blooming on her pale cheek. All you do is talk and talk. It's annoying. Who the hell do you think you are, trying to threaten me? She clutched her cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief. Tears welled up, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. Ethan Hayes, you hit me. Get lost. Ethan Hayes, you're a bastard. With that, she covered her face and ran away, sobbing. I watched her go, my own face a blank mask, before turning and walking away. The next few days proceeded exactly as I had planned. On the day I finished liquidating all my newly acquired assets, I got a call from the hospital. Mr. Hayes was awake. When he learned what had happened, he flew into a rage. He summoned me to his bedside and demanded that I kneel and apologize to Caleb. He also insisted that I make a public statement forgiving him. Caleb sat by the bed, looking like a wronged damsel, his eyes red as he glared at me. He looked like he wanted to tear me apart with his bare hands. I smiled and gently tucked my father's blanket in. Dad, you have the energy to meddle in this, but you'd be better off focusing on your recovery. After all, you need to get better so you can get a job when you're discharged. You wouldn't want to be a burden on Mom, would you? My father stared at me, confused. What are you talking about? Oh, you don't know? I said cheerfully. It's nothing really. Mom just transferred all of her personal assets to me. My father's breathing became ragged. The numbers on his heart monitor started to jump. His eyes widened, fixed on me. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but shock and weakness stole his voice. What? What did you say? He finally managed to croak, his chest heaving violently. My mother rushed to his side, patting his back in alarm. Richard, what's wrong? I didn't have that much anyway. What does it matter if I gave it all to Ethan? You fool! You foolish woman! You've ruined us. You've destroyed the company. My father was shaking, seized by a violent coughing fit. I watched the two of them argue, with Caleb standing by helplessly, and nodded in satisfaction. According to the novel, Hayes Enterprises was already on the verge of collapse. My father had been secretly transferring all the company's valuable assets to shell corporations registered under my mother's name. Even she didn't know the full extent of it. The public-facing Hayes Enterprises was a hollowed-out shell, ready to implode at any moment. In the original plot, after the main character donated his kidney, my father pretended to finally accept him. He then handed over control of the failing Hayes Enterprises to him. The main character became the scapegoat, hounded by creditors until he took his own life. Meanwhile, the three of them, Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, and Caleb, would have escaped with a real fortune, living happily ever after. Sophia would have gotten her wish and married Caleb. A true fairy tale ending. And no one would have cared about the dead main character. If I hadn't read the book, I would have walked right into the same trap. I smiled. Dad, how could the company be destroyed? I'm a very capable person. You should feel secure leaving it in my hands. My words nearly sent him into cardiac arrest. The monitor let out a high-pitched, piercing alarm. Nurses and doctors rushed into the room to stabilize him. My mother, pale with terror, cried out, "Richard! Richard, hang on!" Caleb just stood there, staring at me with a look of venom and a new, creeping fear. After a few minutes of frantic work, my father's condition stabilized. But the doctor gave a stern warning. He needed absolute rest, with no more emotional distress. I stood outside the hospital room, watching the chaos through the glass, and felt nothing. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was my lawyer. His voice was cautious, but tinged with excitement. Everything was done. After I left the hospital that day, I filed the paperwork to withdraw from school. I packed a bag and left the city without a word to anyone. All the assets my mother had transferred to me were sold off. Even the Park Avenue penthouse they lived in no longer belonged to them. The ticking time bomb at the heart of Hayes Enterprises was detonated ahead of schedule. The three of them were left with nothing, virtually overnight. They couldn't even afford the hospital bills. In a final act of pity, the Lancaster family stepped in, paying for my father's discharge out of respect for their old friendship. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes tried to get back on their feet. They went to see Old Man Lancaster for a loan. He had them thrown out, tossing a check for $10,000 at them as a final severance. He also sent Sophia to a boarding school in Switzerland, permanently severing her ties to Caleb. The Hayes family ended up in a tiny, cramped apartment, less than 500 square feet. My mother, who had never done a day of manual labor in her life, was forced to become a housewife, enduring my father's daily drunken rages. Caleb was expelled from school. With a permanent mark on his record for academic fraud, no other school would accept him. He was forced into the workforce early, struggling alongside my father to find menial jobs. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I wasn't Ethan Hayes now. I was myself again, and I was going to live the life I wanted. A life of total freedom. One day, I was on a yacht off the coast of Miami, partying with a group of beautiful models. Just as things were getting interesting, the long-forgotten mechanical voice echoed in my head. Damn, you actually pulled it off. You're really living the high life. Fine, I'm sending you back to your original world. Let the real Ethan Hayes enjoy this for a change. Panic surged through me. Wait, no, just a little longer. I literally just took my pants off. But before I could finish, the world started to spin.